Hi everyone, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie and today I'm going to be showing you my favorite Witchy and Vampycore nail polishes. So you might remember a couple of weeks ago I shared my general favorites for Halloween, which were a little bit more colorful maybe, but I mentioned in that video that I had so many other favorites that I wanted to share that I felt fell under the witchy or vampire kind of aesthetic, and so I figured I could just combine them into one video, but they are going to be shown in like their separate sections. So as always, I will save more of my thoughts for the end. For now, let me just show you the swatches. So starting with my witchy shades, the first polish I have is Sassy Sauce's Wicked Sorcery, which I was so excited to pick up recently. This is a black jelly base with this sort of steely purple to red shifting multi-chrome magnetic shimmer. I guess it's another take on the black to red kind of multi-chrome, but this is the magnetic version and I am just so obsessed with it. The formula on this one was pretty smooth and easy to work with, but it is a bit thin and almost spotty looking. I decided to build this up in 3 coats here, and I did have a little bit of a bald spot near the tip of my nail, but you could also just do 1 coat of this over black and it would be so much easier to wear that way. Obviously, the velvet effect for this is stunning. It just looks so glowy, so cool. I love the more purple kind of shimmer color that you see head on, but obviously once it shifts to red in indirect light, it is just so spooky. This next polish is Night Owl Lacquer's Heart of a Witch, which is from their very fitting potion ingredients line. If I understand it correctly, it's kind of a collection theme that she brings back every year, and I just absolutely love this one. I picked it up last year when I first did my little Night Owl haul for the first time. It has this super dark, enchanting purple jelly base that's filled with these iridescent aqua to indigo shifting flakies. As you'll see in a bit, purple I heavily associate as being a very like witchy color, and this name is just so perfect, and I love the added flakes. They just glow so beautifully against the base. The formula on this one was okay. You kind of saw me struggling a little bit getting it very even coverage, especially after the second coat, so I had to be a little careful with my third coat and try to float the polish as much as I could, but I feel like it did even out on 3 and it looks fantastic. I also love that the flaky have this really beautiful shift to pink. The next shade I have is China Glaze's Hex Boyfriend, which was from a Halloween collection several years ago at this point, but it just was one of my favorites and one of the few Halloween China Glazes that I still have in my collection. I think I would describe this as a very blackened green base that's packed with this green micro shimmer. This also dries down matte, which you'll see in a minute, and it just looks so cool. Like, I am so impressed with how matte this dries. I'm not usually a big fan of matte nails or matte top coats, but when I want it to have negative shine, and this is so perfect for that. But my personal preference is having a glossy top coat on this because it is just so sparkly and enticing. I'm sure you know I love a good glowy shimmer, but I really love how subtle this is. I could not have a witchy core video without including ILNP's Hex. This came out in a Halloween collection a couple of years ago, and it is just so perfect. It's a black jelly base that's filled with orange and gold to green shifting multi-chrome flakies with this subtle dusting of holographic sparkle. It is just so magical and mystical. You may have remembered me sharing this in my Halloween favorites video last year. I should have included it in this year's, but I knew it was going to be in this video anyway. It is just so perfectly spooky, where those orange glowing flakes remind me of seeing campfire embers burning like in the middle of a forest, and you just hear like witches laughing. It's so spooky and cool. I just love this shade. Up next I have Cirque Colors Enchanted, which was the purple trithermal from the Bewitched collection that they brought back early last month. And I normally give thermals a hard time, but but some of them are just super, super gorgeous. I especially love the transitions in this one, which unfortunately I didn't do a great job of showing in my live swatch here, so please enjoy some photos of this one. But yeah, it is just so freaking gorgeous. I did also have to include Witching Hour from that same Bewitched collection. One, because the name is so perfect, and two, because this is just another thermal that I really, really enjoy. This one transitions from a super soft gray to a dark charcoal gray. It doesn't really transition to a true black, but it does get dark enough that, in my opinion, you can do some really cool peekaboo spooky nail art. Like, I've painted spider webs using this polish. I did see Nicole do this bat stamping and I thought that was so cool, so I tried doing some glitter placements with the Sophia black glitters from last year, and I was just so obsessed with how it turned out. This next polish is from Noodles nail polish called Straight Outta Salem, which was a polish pickup exclusive a couple of years ago, and it is just one of my favorite Halloween kind of polishes. Very witchy, very cool. It's this really dark teal kind of crelly base that is packed with these black and orange micro glitters and these small golden flakies. It is just such a cool and unique polish. Like, I know I've talked about it before about not trying to fall for very gimmicky holiday specific polishes, but this was one of my early ones, so I just have a very special place in my heart for it, and especially because it's just unique. I think it's justified. I also have to include ILNP's Ritual from the very recent Coven collection. This was their witchy themed Halloween collection for this year, and just, you know, honorable mention to the rest of the lineup because it easily could fit into this video, but I didn't want to repeat all of my swatches for it, so I just wanted to highlight my top favorite from that set. This is another darkened teal jelly kind of base with this beautiful silvery blue magnetic pigment. I just find it so enchanting, especially with the velvet effect, which you know is my favorite. Next up, I have Cracked Polish's Secret Purple, which was this very limited edition kind of shade. I believe Monique created this polish just in her stories with, you know, some extra pigment that she had, and I was super lucky enough to grab it right before it sold out, and I am just so happy because this is like the witchy purple of my dreams. It is so inky and dark, but that shimmer just glows in such a beautiful way that it is just so mesmerizing. I feel like this is the perfect color for a witch's hat or cape, or even for little bags to carry like her trinkets or tarot cards. And my last witchy shade is Holo Taco's Secret Society, which came out recently in the Dark Academia collection. I was so pleasantly surprised with how much I enjoyed this polish because I feel like it's just not one that I would gravitate to in general, and I have nothing like it in my collection, but it is just so unique and immediately invokes this image of like being underground where everything is made of stone and it's only lit by candles. It is just so eerie, but in such a cool way, and I feel like the name is so fitting too. And now moving on to the vampy shades, I have ILNP's Flicker, which is kind of like in a similar vein as the last polish, where this shade is just invoking the vibe or atmosphere, but this one is for vampires. Flicker is a really soft gray crelly base filled with this fiery orange to yellow shifting shimmer. So again, it is just giving these like candlelit vibes, and everything is pale and lacking life and color. But it is just such a cool and unique polish. I just love this one so much. I think I would consider this kind of gray like a neutral shade, but it's still very spooky. Of course, I have to have a couple of blood reds for my vampy shades. The first one that I have is ILNP's Poison, which is this blood red magnetic from a Halloween collection a few years ago. I want to say this was one of ILNP's very first magnetic formulas, and it is just so stunning. It has a really lush jelly base that is very pigmented, so it's easily built up in 2 or 3 coats depending on your preference. The red magnetic shimmer is just so crisp with how it stands out, and it also shifts to this kind of orangey yellow color in indirect light, so it's kind of fiery. And no surprise, I also love this with the velvet effect. It just looks so cool, so bloody, but also very sexy. I also had to include Holo Taco Bat B from the Sophia collection last year. I feel like this was a must-have for this lineup. The name is just so perfect, but I think the color is too. I know a lot of people didn't end up loving this shade because of how subtle it was, and it definitely is subtle. Like I mentioned with Hex Boyfriend in my witchy lineup, there's just something about these subtle shimmers that I feel like are just so fitting, I guess because of how dark and alluring they are. They just remind me of the occults. Next, I have Lurid Lacquer's Blood Bag, which was a recent charity polish, and this is another blood red. This one I think I would also kind of describe as a subtle shimmer, or at least it looks very subtle under this kind of lighting, where the shimmer particles are just a little hard to see. They don't stand out too much against the base, but in real life, I feel like you can see it a lot more. I was able to capture it a little bit with adjusting my lighting, so just stay tuned for that. But yeah, I thought this was another perfect color with how dark and vampy it is, and I just also love the name because, not to get super dark or graphic or whatever, but I'm like, a blood bag basically sounds like it would be a Capri Sun for a vampire. Up next, I have Dark Like My Heart from Cracked Polish. This is a dark gray jelly, and I feel like it just would be so perfect for a vampire. Again, kind of like Flicker, I would consider these grays to be neutrals for vampires, maybe because, their skin is so pale. But you know me, I love jellies. I love the versatility of them. I feel like this one can be built up to use in some peekaboo nail art, or, paired with other shades, or just built up on its own. I know it doesn't look super impressive here on the second coat. I kind of was struggling with getting even coverage, but I went in with a slightly thicker third coat, and I feel like it looks so cool here. For a slightly more colorful option, I have Mooncat's Freshly Bitten, which was in the Seasons of Persephone collection earlier this year. There's just something so sexy, and I don't know, it just reminds me of vampires. This was one of the shades that I sort of mentioned possibly including in my Twilight video, but it was mainly for the name. I feel like this color doesn't really give me Twilight vibes, but it gives me general vampire vibes. So I'm happy to give it another spotlight because it is just so beautiful. It's like this lush berry kind of purple that has this purple to red shifting shimmer. Like, I would wear this if I was a vampire. Next, I have another Mooncat, and this is Queen of the Dead, which was also from the Seasons of Persephone collection. This one is actually a thermal that transitions from this really dark burgundy, as seen here in the cold state, to this brighter kind of berry red in the warm state, which you can see very briefly here before doing my second coat. I don't know, I love thermals. I've learned, especially for Halloween, and this one I think is just so cool, so vampy, so sexy. The name is obviously perfect, and I just love the colors that it transitions to. This was another one that I was really close on including in my Twilight video. If you can believe it, I have yet another blood red. This is Holo Taco's Devil's Advocate, which was also from the Dark Academia collection. I feel like this one needs no explanation. It's just another perfect vampy kind of shade. I do wish the formula on this was maybe a little bit thinner though, because on the second coat, it is really hard to pick up like just how dark of a red this is. It's definitely one of those shades that looks black in most lighting, but it looks really cool when you catch it in the light and you see the red. In a similar vein, I do have OPI's Linkin Park After Dark, which I feel like is such a cult classic for fall in general. Personally, I do think vampires would generally just wear black or maybe like a dark red, but I feel like this one being a super dark, like blackened purple, is a great option to just mix it up a bit. And my last vampy shade is Zoya Payton, which is this really beautiful kind of royal purple jelly with this holographic flaky. This is another one that I personally would wear if I was a vampire because it's giving dark, it's giving vampy, but it's still a bit sparkly and beautiful. I just love this kind of formula from Zoya specifically, and this one is just so stunning. I feel like it's looking a bit darker though here, so I have this extra clip that's like a little out of focus, but this is much more color accurate. So finally, here are my collages. This first one is for my witchy shades, and you can see the bottom row is just mainly these purples to black shades with a little bit of these dark teals and kind of greens. Obviously, all these colors I just heavily associate with like any kind of witchy aesthetic. And then here for my Vampycore shades, these are obviously just super dark blood reds with some purples and black shades. I still can't tell if Freshly Bitten is a little too colorful for this lineup or if Flicker is too light, but I feel like these work. So that wraps up my favorite witchy and vampycore nail polishes. As always, I can't wait to hear what you think of my shades and if you also gravitate towards these or if you prefer the more colorful kind of saturated Halloween shades, because obviously I love both. That's why I made videos on both of them. Even though I am a seasonal wearer, I think in general I do just prefer like brighter colors, and so I just love when darker or vampier kind of holidays like Halloween specifically can be brightened up with like some neons, for example. But I do love indulging in just like the super dark and vampy occult type of polishes. These are just so good, and I feel like they just needed another spotlight on my channel. So let me know which ones are your favorites, or if you have any of them in your collection, or just what other witchy or vampire kind of polishes you have that you think would fit within these lineups. Because if you know me, you know I love a good theme, and so I was just so happy to have so many like specifically witchy or vampy kind of polishes. But anyway, I hope that you enjoyed the video. Please leave me a like if you did, and leave a comment with any and all thoughts that you have so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!